cell phone usage, and I'd like them to kind of talk about what they're doing and what their plans are with it.
Can I just say something? Hey, David, what particular time of day do you notice this occurring? Is it a certain time of day? Is it a certain day of the week?
It's usually around lunchtime when there's more traffic, both on Main Street and also people coming into the village to eat lunch and do business.
Okay. Is it a certain day of the week, or just is it throughout the week?
It's random. I can't say it's one person specifically that does it every day on Tuesdays at 10 o'clock. It's just a random thing. As people get busy, they're on their phone, they want to grab lunch, they have things to do, and they don't pay attention.
Okay, and you're talking about the area of East Washington, North Main Street, and then the downtown district?
Yes, primarily Orange and Main, and also the two major crosswalks, the one in front of the hardware store, and then one farther down near Hartwood and the gazebo.
Okay.
So if I can chime in, the distracted driving, specifically the cell phone, is and has been for the last several years a priority of the officers while they're out there. So certainly we'll continue to target that specific offense, and perhaps can position a vehicle in the downtown area during the noon hours to see if we notice an increase in that. But I can tell you that that is something that the officers are regularly looking for. In fact, that's probably one of the more common stops that we make is for the cell phone.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But we will continue to pursue that. And if the lieutenant's taken notes, to try to have a car in that particular area to see if we notice that it's more common at that time of day.
Okay.
I do know that you guys did that for a while during the walk to school hours right there at the BP station. And that was, I don't remember what the numbers were, but you did catch a fair amount of people, and did seem to kind of curve that in the mornings for a little while. So hopefully this will make a curve. Okay. Any other comments on that?
Yeah, I have a couple comments.
Sure.
The crosswalks are inherently kind of precarious. Anytime you have pedestrians and vehicles moving in their different directions. The problem I see is the pedestrians are coming out behind vehicles, and there's very little room for the driver or time for them to react. And sometimes the pedestrian kind of assumes they have the right of way. I've seen this problem out on Main Street in front of Riverside Park when someone's parking illegally in front of the hardware store or in front of the park there, or with vehicles parked on Main Street across from Township Hall where they're unloading and loading stuff. And is there something we can do to make it safer, to kind of prevent the vehicles blocking the view from people trying to walk across?
Is there targeting, I mean, are the parking enforcement officers targeting tickets on those, or is that a regular police ticket?
It's both.
Okay.
It's both. So our parking guys have not, their hours have been cut back just from the pandemic, that we kind of lessened that. That's about to change in the coming weeks here. I think it's more an issue with delivery vehicles. At least that's what I have found. At the FedEx trucks, the UPS drivers, the big trucks they want to pull up right there at that crosswalk. I've seen it too. And when we see them, we tell them to move. But I think that's something that the police department can focus in on. And especially once our parking officers are back on, for their full hours that they were at before, we can make that a priority. But I think increasing the visibility of those mid-block crosswalks is what we need to really focus in on, because even when there aren't cars parked there, I've seen people just step out, or people hesitate to step out, and then the car thinks that they're not coming out. So then they wait, and then they go, and then the person stepped out. So I would like to see us try to figure out a way to make those beyond just that simple plastic sign that gets run over 3 times a week. We need to find a way for those mid-block crosswalks are inherently dangerous as it is. So they need to be better. They need to have better visibility.
You know, with parking space being at a premium, I'm concerned about the crossing from the triangle over to the other side of Main Street by the gazebo. There's really, the pedestrians are going to be pretty much blocked by those vehicles. It's bumper to bumper up to that crosswalk. And it might mean that we lose a whole parking space, but if we would have a triangular mark for it so that the pedestrian has about 10 or 12 feet opening total, 6 feet each side of the crosswalk, they know that there's more visibility. That's the one that's most precarious all the time. And then the ones you mentioned, Amber, about the delivery vehicles, that's more prevalent up around the hardware store and Township Hall.
I've got 2 just really quick thoughts. One is, excuse me, I really don't want to be that guy, and I think that we need more common sense and less regulating things like this. But I do agree with Jim. I do see a lot of people popping out and jaywalking and jumping off behind cars, and it scares me when I'm driving.
Mhm.
Do we issue tickets for jaywalkers, and are we? I'm assuming we are watching those people, and when they're not crossing a crosswalk, it seems like they ought to be held to the same. It's unsafe as well. Sorry, and I've just one other thing. In terms of that crosswalk, you're batting 1,000, Jim. I agree with you on that one too. That crosswalk at the gazebo, you can't see cars coming, the way down the street that are about to plow you over. Is there a way to put up like a mirror? You know what I mean? You could look in like you have on a blind spot on a road where you could see, instead of losing a parking spot, you just glanced up at the concave mirror, you could see the cars coming down the road instead of kind of inching your way out. And I don't know, it's a thought. I just think, I hate to lose parking spaces. And I think, maybe there's some other way for us to see who's coming down that road. And I'm sure they clobber your sign all the time.
And to go along with that, because one of the conversations that I think we need to have is starting to talk about the addition of illuminated crosswalks or illuminated crossings on those mid blocks. And there is, Jason sent some great pictures of the ones that are in Willoughby, correct? And I can pull those up if you guys would like to see them. And that's a pretty good option, and it may be a more cost-effective option for us. But it's a conversation that we need to have, because I just don't. The distracted driving stuff is, we can police, the heck out of it, but they're still going to happen. We don't have enough officers to be constantly watching it throughout Main Street, so we have to start providing, I think, a better alternative to alert drivers that these are happening. And then obviously this is a capital budget question that we're going to have to approach with streets and sidewalks about how can we start implementing these things, because I think that's going to be an important thing going forward that we look at. So not only on that.
Andrew, can I chime in for 1 second? I just wanted to ask, while we have the police chief and lieutenant here, their opinion on the illuminated crosswalks, as well as their opinion on removing parking spaces around the crosswalks around the triangle, because I know that's something we've discussed for years. Both there's a financial issue with the illumination of the crosswalks, which I know we've applied for grants, and we could do that again, or we could try to find the money. And there's also, with the moving of the parking spaces, there's a parking issue. But I guess I just want to know from them, is that a good idea? Is that something we should be shooting for or not?
So I'll answer, and then I'll let Jason give his opinion too. So I think the issue is people not paying attention. I think that's even more pervasive than people being on cell phones. Pulling somebody over for a cell phone violation is easy. I mean, we could literally do that all day long in the village. And like I said, it's one of our more common stops. We would continue to do that. What I don't know how to fix is getting people to actually pay attention, right? I've seen people not on their cell phones turn when there's somebody in the crosswalk. So how do we get the driver to get their head out of the clouds and recognize there's a crosswalk here. So yes, I am 100% in favor of trying, especially at the mid blocks,
Mhm.
something that flashes, something that catches people's attention to let them know, hey, this is a crosswalk. Yeah, if they're on their phone, then we're still going to have that problem. But for those drivers that are just thinking about where they have to go, or, you know, the fight they just had with their teenager, whatever it may be,
Right.
we need something to say to them, hey, you're right at a crosswalk.
And we're starting to walk this dangerous line to add to this, because I stood in front of the Key Bank crosswalks all winter long and got hit, like almost hit once a week, wearing a high visibility jacket and holding a stop sign. But when we start, it's fine when I can hear the vehicle coming towards me, but with the electric vehicles that are coming out right now, they don't make any noise. So all of a sudden you turn around and there's a car there and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? So there's something to be said for, you know, there's going to be this added danger as cars become silent. Then you can't hear them coming like you can a gasoline powered car. So there is that issue that we will have to approach.
Looks like
Hey.
Erin's got her hand in the air and has for a while.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Hey, sorry. I won't speak too long because I know we have some residents with their hands up as well. But I do want to make sure, I appreciate that we're looking at some of the engineering solutions around this rather than just trying to sort of ticket our way out of it. I don't know that tickets in and of themselves will solve the problem. While I think there's certainly a supportive tool that we can use, I just don't think we can expect a village the size of Chagrin Falls just to have officers on every single corner at every single minute of the day. So I like that I'd like to see us really seriously explore the in-ground lights. And if we have to have the flashy blinky lights on the poles, that's fine. I think we need to look at those, as well as I concur with the comments about, let's really look at those parking spots that are close to these crosswalks and see if we already have a parking problem, are 4 or 5 spots really going to be the tipping point? So I know, unpopular point, but anyway, sorry, I don't want to take away from resident voices either. Thanks.
So can we let Joe speak, because he's been waiting a good long minute here.
Sure. Yes, I'm very familiar with that. First of all, my name is Joe Laumer. I live at 289 Hickory Hill Road. I'm very familiar with the crossing at Willoughby. I used to live in Willoughby, and it's a very effective crossing as far as getting the attention of drivers. I think it really does the job. One thing that I think that occasionally happens, or more than just occasionally, is particularly I've noticed at the crossing at the hardware store, you'll be standing there waiting to cross, and a car on the inside lane will stop, and you'll start crossing, but somebody comes zipping along on the outside lane. They can't see you because that car is blocking you. And I think illuminated intersection crosswalk would help. You know, those have flashing lights all the way across the street that each lane would be able to see directly in front of them. And I think they're rather effective in catching the attention of drivers. There is, and that's a pretty high tech, kind of a costly solution. I think that would be like kind of the Cadillac of solutions. I have lived in other communities where they've tried a little low-tech solution where they had a pole mounted at the crosswalk at the curb with orange flags on each side of the street. And as somebody came to cross the street, they would grab an orange flag and kind of hold out in front of them as they are walking across the street. Again, increasing their visibility. Certainly a low-tech solution, but I don't know if it's something that, certainly not, I don't think it was effective as a lighted crosswalk, but in the interim, it would be something that could be relatively easily implemented with minimal cost.
You don't mind me asking, where was the orange flags?
I've lived in 5 different major cities in my life, and I've been trying to think where that was, and I couldn't tell you. I was prepared for that question, but I could not remember where I've seen that.
I think we had a flag system here in the
We did.
past. I
We
don't
did.
know. I didn't live here during that time, but I have heard that it was in use. And if anyone wants to speak to that, what happened with the system, we did have that at one point for the same problem. So
We did have it. What happened with it is people didn't use it. I mean, so part of that relies on the person to actually take the flag with them. So we did have that for a while at the one by the hardware store. And I'm not sure who made the decision to discontinue it, but if my memory serves me, I don't know, Jim, do you remember? I think you were on council then, weren't you?
No, I don't remember any flags.
Bill,
But
the mayor told
There's-
me it was during the Brick administration.
I think it was Dwight Milko that's what I've always heard, that it was a Dwight Milko project. So,
But back to Joe's comment, I couldn't agree with him more about the double traffic. One car stops and the other one doesn't. It's confusing and it's very concerning. And then also you have the other thing where a car stops with nobody in the pedestrian lane because they think they're supposed to stop. There's just a lot of mixed messages there. And I don't know if waving flags is the solution, but I think we ought to investigate some different options.
Okay, I think we have, who do we have up next?
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Next is Chelsea Whitman Rush. Chelsea, if you could unmute and start your camera, please.
Hi, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
great. Hi, my name is Chelsea Whitman Rush, and I live at 49 West Washington Street. I mentioned this on the Village Block Club page, but Angela, Andrew, Tara Martin, who's another resident, and myself, we met about 1.5 years ago at a coffee shop in town to discuss our concerns as mothers, as community members. Tara had mentioned that she had some concerns about what was occurring with the people not observing children walking across the street near the intermediate school. I have experienced people not heeding to my children walking across the street with my father-in-law. My father-in-law was almost hit one day pushing our baby in a stroller. And I know of other people who've been hit, which prompted this meeting, a meeting between the four of us. And I wanted to mention, I agree with a lot of the points made already, but I wanted to mention that somebody in this 160 comment Facebook thread that's been happening, that they either have seen or maybe have just suggested some signage to pedestrians that say things in a very positive way, because obviously we want to be a welcoming community. We get a lot of pedestrian traffic on the weekends. We want them to go into our shops, into our restaurants. Living in the village, I enjoy the hubbub on the weekends, farmers market, obviously, but saying something in a kind way on a sign that says, please observe, we appreciate you not jaywalking, or thank you for not jaywalking. Thank you for observing our crosswalks. And then I think illuminating the crosswalks or creating a flag system with that will really help people. I don't think that people, I go to Starbucks every day. I'm a junkie, and I see people crossing across the street probably 7 or 8 times before I get out of my car, because I go at a very high traffic time in the morning. And I don't think people even notice that there's a crosswalk. There are crosswalks in either ends of Starbucks. I think they just get out of their car and they walk across the street and head up Grove Hill to leave. So I think illuminating those, making them more visible, and then some signage would really, really help. And I like the positivity of that. I like saying that in a positive way to people.
Can we do it like the airport signs, like the closest crosswalk is here?
I love, yeah, closest. Thank you for observing that the crosswalk is 10 feet that way.
The closest crosswalk might be behind you.
Right. Yeah. So that's all I wanted to add. I agree with a lot of the other points made already. And I'm on board with the lighted system. I know there's a cost associated with that, but.
Thank you.
Oh.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Aaron, were you raising your hand? Okay, I have one other question for everybody else who's been on the board. Has there ever been consideration of putting some sort of crosswalk between Valley Lutheran and the library? on the other side, because because my sister lives up on the other side of the town, so I drive that way constantly, and I constantly see people cutting across from the parking lot where we rent space over to the other side of the street. So I was just wondering if there's ever been any discussion about that, and maybe that's something we need to look into for future state things.
I know that it's been discussed, and the curve is very dangerous there. People pulling around the curve, and that's usually, they don't really want somebody to come flying around that curve and have a crosswalk immediately greet the driver on the other side. So it has been proposed even back further by the library. I know when we cross kids there for walk to school day to get to parents picking them up, even that gets dicey, and that's with a crossing guard there. So those are the considerations that I've heard when that's been discussed on several occasions. I don't know if that's changed, but that's where we're at.
Okay.
I don't know how effective those crosswalks are. We have one out in front of M Italian, and it's dicey. I mean, it's scary. Cars it's just, I mean, it's all done in good faith, but do cars pay attention to it? And more importantly, do pedestrians pay attention to it? I don't know. I think we need to have more discussion on that.
I was just wondering if anybody had ever, if there was a reason why we hadn't put one there in the future, and it sounds like or in the past, it sounds like it's the turn that, without some other way to stop the vehicles, you got a big turn there, and it's a blind turn and you're coming down the hill, so it's a difficult one.
I have time here. There's another situation that makes me a little concerned. The intersection of Bell and Main Street, when the traffic arrow is eliminated going south on Main Street, the crosswalk sign for Main Street goes to walk, and there's cars still turning left on Main Street going up to Bell. And it's sometimes hard to see the pedestrian because there's a lot of background commotion and stuff going on with the building on the corner. But more importantly, the person that's looking to turn left is only looking for a clear shot through the northbound traffic and not paying any attention to the crosswalk in front of Bell. And I've seen 4 or 5 pretty close situations. I mean, one where I thought it was over. I was on my scooter and I screamed as loud as I could. So I don't know what we could do there, but I think we need to have a discussion on it. Just because the crosswalk goes away doesn't mean it's going to be safe for somebody in the middle of that intersection when there's turning movement going on.
So you're talking about coming off of Bell and turning right?
No, going south on Main Street. There's 2 lanes in front of the popcorn shop.
Yeah.
There's 2 lanes. The left lane is turn left only, and the right lane is going south on Main Street.
Right.
The left turn lane is initially a green arrow when the light turns green for southbound. The crosswalk has a do not walk sign until the arrow turns off, and then it's green left turn as available. And the cars that are turning left are focused on what cars are coming from the north. And sometimes they might pick a little gap that's a little short, so they're going to kind of scoot it around the corner, and there could be someone halfway across that walkway.
So it's almost like you need a left turn only on, arrow, right? And
well, go ahead, Amber. You know what I'm talking about?
I do. I mean, you have similar situations when people are the way traffic lights are set up, and it's not unique to Chagrin Falls, but there are many intersections where a vehicle is turning. You have the same thing on Washington turning on to North Main. You have a green light to go. I don't think it's an arrow at that intersection. It's just a solid green, but you still are expected to yield to that pedestrian in the crosswalk. But I would agree, having if it's a green turn arrow rather than just a solid green.
Right. Well, there's a green on southbound Main Street. It is a green turn arrow, and then it goes solid green. And when it goes solid, go ahead.
So you're saying when I'll have to go watch it tomorrow. So you're saying when the arrow comes on, so does the crosswalk light?
No,
Or because
when the arrow, when the light is green to go north and south, initially
Right.
the right arrow, if there's somebody in the left turn lane, the left turn arrow goes on. And that's on for a few cars to move through the cycle. And then it goes all green south and all green north. And when it goes all green north, then the walk sign goes on Bell Street. And it's a little frightening because, go ahead.
Well, it's that at most intersections. In fact, most of our intersections are that way, as well as those in other cities. When it's a solid green and you're making a left turn, you're expected to yield to the pedestrian in the crosswalk. So there again is that problem of how do we get the driver to realize that just because they have a green light doesn't mean. So right, so from an engineering standpoint, you either not have a walk sign during that time period.
Well, you got to have a walk sign during some of the green light.
Where you say no turn.
Just during the arrow, you could have it. You could have it just. Oh, actually, after the arrow, and that you could have a protected period just for pedestrians. That's what we kept trying to look at the other end of the triangle, but the traffic just was insane. But maybe, I mean, I'm sure the traffic engineer looked at all of this. We always kind of looked at it all collectively, but maybe Bell and Maine is a different story. Like, I don't know. I mean, I would be interested in hearing whether if we protected it, the pedestrian interval at Bell and Maine, if it would also cause massive traffic backups, because that's a little bit of a different stretch of road. I don't know.
Then there still is that.
What? Sorry.
I was gonna say, Angie, you would probably know best because you probably turn there all the time.
Oh, I do. No, and it is, I mean, they're always dangerous. I mean, that's, I think, one of the most dangerous things for pedestrians is when you have a turning vehicle that's turning left against they're turning across traffic. So they're looking at the traffic, not at the crosswalk. And then if they turn and there's a pedestrian in that crosswalk, it sometimes comes as a surprise to them. But whenever we tried to just make that pedestrian interval protected at the other end of the triangle, the traffic would get crazy. We had problems with our hardware. And the engineer said there's just no way to do it without getting a huge backup. And then you get angry drivers that are all angry because you have this huge traffic backup.
No, Angie, you got to do things so the lights are sequenced so that you move traffic through the town. And I know that we tried for 5 years now, maybe 6, this 5-second advanced walk signal before the traffic lights changed. And I think it was a good effort, but I think it's causing more confusion and more interruption in flow, both pedestrian and vehicle, than it's worth. I also think that sometimes the most precarious situations we see is when drivers get impatient or pedestrians think they can run a gap. And if they're standing on a corner and they're waiting for the sign and it's not coming when they expect it, I think it's given them a lot of different opportunities to get frustrated and make poor judgment moves. I would like to see it go back to the regular, when the light changes, the walk signal changes without a delay or an advance notice. And I think that will help with the traffic. The problem we had down at Main and Washington Street, where it's still not the best setup, we couldn't do all these 5-second delays up and down Main Street and have that light sequence with Bell and everybody else. And it's caused problems for the traffic engineers. They've worked it out the best they can, but I, for one, know when we change that 5-second delay or advance signal. And I know that's when it started causing a lot of traffic backups in intersections. It's a long-winded way of saying I don't like it.
Oh, no, I understand that. I guess I'm not squaring. I guess another solution then to keep the pedestrians so that they're not walking with their green at the same time that the traffic has the green would be to say you can only turn on an arrow at Bell.
No, I'm not saying that. No, that wouldn't work.
I just don't know how you don't have the pedestrian walking parallel to the car at the same time if the car's turning across. But we can, we don't have to get into the weeds on it.
No, yeah, we're getting into weeds there. I'm not either making myself clear or you don't understand. Two different issues. The 5-second advance signal for the walk sign. versus the left turn on the Bell Street off of Main Street. I think those are two of the issues I'd like to see more work done on, along with the crosswalks on the mid block.
I'm gonna talk to our traffic engineer and see if he's got any ideas about maybe just trying it at Bell, or what he thinks the problem would be. You know, how it's actually set up. I'm gonna get more information on how it's actually set up and what our options might be at Bell, to see if he's got anything that we can try.
And ask him too about this 5-second advanced walk signal. And what that does to, because traffic lights need to be synchronized so that, you know, the cars can move through the intersection at the flow that it is occupied by the number of cars. So that's where a traffic engineer earns his money, or her money. And I think that 5 seconds messed it up.
Did you have a comment?
Yes, I did. I think part of the problem is that drivers don't respect crosswalks altogether. The crosswalk on West Washington by Township Hall, or not town, Village Hall. I use that a lot, and I stand there and they don't stop for me. You know, when I could walk out a little bit, I want to cross, they still, you know, if I wave my hand a lot, jump up and down, then they'll stop. But generally, they just drive right through and have no thought that, gee, somebody's trying to cross the street and there's a crosswalk there, and maybe I should even slow down, which I think is another issue. I think that people drive too fast through town. I think the speed limit's 25. And it just seems to me, I know it's hard to tell if you not have radar, but it seems to me like people are just driving too fast, that's part of the problem also.
Okay. And then does anybody else have, because I noticed Joe is back. Did you have another comment?
I did. Getting back to that Bell and Main intersection, I'm very familiar with that intersection, probably go through there several times a day. And I find that delay a bit confusing as well, because it's not consistent. But the other thing is that left arrow does not always come on. If a car isn't sitting at that intersection queued up waiting to turn, there won't be a left green arrow. And I think that inconsistency creates a little bit of confusion at times as well. But the other thought I had, and I don't know if somebody was alluding to it earlier, but is that an intersection that would lend itself to a protected walk in all directions? So all three directions would have just walk, no cars moving at all. And you could also do a diagonally across the corners, like you see in a lot of college campuses, downtown college campuses. But I think there's other issues that come up with that, with delay in traffic.
Yeah, Joe, if I may,
Sure.
Rocky, if I can address that. We looked into that about 6 years ago, and it really wasn't feasible. And unfortunately, it's not feasible to do it for one intersection and not the whole village. The issue we have at Bell and Main Street, and I forgot that point you just brought up. You're right. If there's no car sitting in the queue going south, then there's no turn lane, no turn arrow. And so that does create more confusion. So the other problem with that intersection, and we need to take a careful look at it, it gets a lot of traffic on the weekends with people coming from Viewing the Falls to go up to wherever. I mean, there's people on that corner to where you think you're going to be taking toes off when you're going around the corner. And it's a little uncomfortable for everybody, pedestrians and vehicles. So I'd like to see a little more investigation in it. I like your idea, Joe. I like your thinking, but we need more work on it.
Thank you.
We had a question coming through the question and answer from Brian Drum, and he posed the question, these are the same issues faced by cities all over the country. Have we looked at other programs like Complete Streets or Vision Zero for ideas?
So I have actually started looking at, previous to this conversation, some of the complete street stuff. I was not aware of Vision Zero. So I'm reading what they have. It's very interesting. It's kind of an all-inclusive, the complete street stuff is like an all-inclusive kind of walking, biking, crosswalk kind of combination. And it's interesting because they definitely talk a lot about the, 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, which is the problem that we really have, is that our pedestrians are crossing a fair amount. The problem is that they often talk about having mandatory stops at kind of those midway crossings. So that would be a very interesting thing to see how that would work in Chagrin. There'd be a lot of stopping to get through downtown. So I'm aware of it, and I'm looking at it to see what options we have. Does anybody else have any other questions, comments, concerns?
Yes, David F. has his hand raised. I will promote him to a panelist. David, if you're able to unmute,
Sorry.
please. That's okay.
I don't know why it does that. I want to thank everybody for listening to our concerns, and I know everybody's trying to do what we can with the constraints and budget and questions as which avenue to pursue is the best. We also have a problem as weather gets nice with the bicyclists who don't look at anything. They don't look at traffic lights, they don't look at pedestrians, they don't look at the fact that they're holding up 40 cars behind them because 20 of them are riding dual file on Bell Street. So I know there's a lot of things to do, but I think we just have to get the word out however we can through social media or maybe some friendly signage to be nice to everybody. Nobody owns the roads. We all have to share them.
Well said.
Thank you.
Brian, thank you for joining us.
Brian.
If you can unmute, please.
Hello, thanks for having me. I don't know if I need to introduce myself. I'm Brian Drum. I live at 51 West Summit, and I apologize. I was late. I was on with the Cub Scouts, so I might have missed the first half if any of this was discussed before. But just going back to my point about Vision Zero or complete streets, I'm not sure what you're looking at, Rocky, but I don't. My experience with it hasn't been. I haven't noticed an emphasis on things like mandatory stop signs. I think the really interesting parts and maybe actionable parts for us would be about design changes that encourage drivers to pay more attention at crosswalks using things like road diets, or I think they're called traffic tables, to basically raise the road a bit to distinguish a crosswalk from a normal lane of traffic. And so I think it'd be worth a deeper look at some of those things for some ideas.
And when they talk about, when they start to talk about crosswalks, which is in like those midway crossings, they often talk about narrowing the road down or adding like a pedestrian safe zone island in the middle. But we don't have a lot of space to work with on either side.
Rocky, a lot of the examples I think you'll find in there of where they're narrowing the road where there is parking, or in what is the parking lane otherwise, but where there's parking not allowed, which helps, I think, reduce confusion. So you don't have people popping out from, parked or temporarily standing cars, and they have less distance to cross then.
Yeah.
It's not removing a lane from a 2 ways each direction.
Maybe at this point, we should compile some information and have another, meeting on it, have some people put down some specific things. I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, Brian. I haven't done any research on it, but I think it'd be worth our while to start doing some investigating and have more discussions on this.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you. I'd be happy to be a part of that if I can help.
And I know somebody, and I do know somebody in the recent has started like a complete streets program, and I'm trying to remember what municipality it was near us. So it would be, when I remember what it is, I'll be interested to go out and see it. So
I think I like the creative thinking. I think the issue with the raised sidewalks, Brian, is I think it's a problem for snow plows. I've lived in cities where they've had that raised sidewalk. It's a great deterrent for drivers to not go too fast. but it's a problem for snowplows.
Can't they lift a snowplow? Do I misunderstand the mechanics of snowplows? I just mean
No.
like, at some point, someone has to make, I mean, the thing that I think we all have to be prepared for is someone's going to have to make a sacrifice somewhere. So like asking our police hold on, Jim. Asking our police officers to like ticket jaywalkers is asking something of our safety forces.
Right.
Asking our plow drivers to lift a plow is asking something of our service department. So like, and narrowing roads and asking drivers to slow down and asking pedestrians to look up. I mean, we're all asking somebody for something. So I don't think we can have any like white elephants or whatever they're called, like special things that where we're going to say, we're not going to ask this department to do anything. It's either got to be all on the table and we have a real discussion around pedestrian safety and we acknowledge maybe the parking sacrifices we're going to have to make, but also the sacrifices we will make as drivers and the sacrifices we make as pedestrians. It's either all in together or none of it's going to work and we're going to continue to band-aid this, until the next people show up and we go through another iteration. Like we've got to just be ready to make some sacrifices is the only piece of frustration I have. I'll stop. And I love the idea of putting a list together and maybe we can do some more follow-up with complete streets and the other 01 and come back with some other options after we talk to the traffic engineer as well. Because I think we've had a lot of good conversation.
Yeah. I would like, Amber, are you waving your hand? Do you have another comment?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that we will in the coming weeks be doing some targeted enforcement down there to see if it helps specifically. Like I said before, I know we see the cell phone part of it, but I think that we need to look more for people that just aren't acknowledging the crosswalk exists in the first place. But we will put that on our priority list starting tomorrow. So warn your neighbors.
I mean, though, could we start with like maybe reminding pedestrians there's a crosswalk rather than just like showing up and dropping the tickets? Because
I'm referring to drive. I'll be honest with you, ticketing people for jaywalking is a very hot button issue. If you guys as the safety committee and council want us to ticket all the jaywalkers, that's fine, but be prepared because you're going to get
a lot of tickets.
You're going to get hammered with. Anytime we've done targeted jaywalking enforcement in the past, it's been a political nightmare. Everybody is, that the cops are evil and, nobody wants to come to Twin Falls because the cops won't let you walk anywhere. I mean, so it's our job and we'll do it if we want, but we need to think about it.
The last thing we need to be doing right now is encouraging people not to come to the green.
Right. I agree. But yes, we can give some nice warnings.
Or just chit chats. I'm fine. They're not even like no writing. Just like, hey, there's a crosswalk.
Yep.
Okay. I don't want to put you in the middle of like, well, we're still working on some stuff, putting police in the middle of trying to.
Well, it's just,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It's not a lack of willingness on our part. I just think that I've been here for 19 years and the whole jaywalking conversation has always been, well, should we or shouldn't we? And it always becomes like this, the police are awful people because why are you harassing me?
I don't think
you guys do a great job of
think
finding
it
that
actually
balance
reduces.
of community policing and and so I appreciate the work that you do. So I don't want to put you guys I don't want to shove you out in front while we're not doing the other deeper work that also really should be done.
Also, Amber, what I heard you say was you'd be doing more investigating into the distracted driver issue as opposed to the jaywalking. Is that right?
Well, what I said was we can do targeted enforcement on the distracted driving, correct?
That's okay.
If you guys want us to target in on the jaywalking, we will do that too. That's our job. But I just want to make we're all on the same team on that because it does create animosity from people because we've experienced it,
Yeah.
So
I don't think, like I said, I'm in Starbucks every morning. I don't think that people even take it seriously. I hear comments about, oh, I had a police officer say something to me this morning. Nobody's taking that seriously. They're going to do it again tomorrow. I think having signage is going to go further than being yelled at, to be honest. Not that people are actively trying to disrespect the police, but I just think that people don't think it's a big deal. So.
Right.
Okay. Well, I'm going to call this meeting to a close. I've got some notes we're going to present to council. We'll be back in hopefully a month or two. I'm going to do some more research into the complete streets and see if there's somebody we can reach out to that can come present to us a little bit what the idea is and maybe have some ideas of what we could do potentially in Chagrin Falls. And then we're going to start the conversation about whether or not we can set aside something in the capital budget in the upcoming years to start looking at lighting signs and what other options we might have with the current equipment that we have within the village. So, and with that note, I'm going to call this meeting of the Safety Committee to close at 7:50. Thank you, everyone.